that economies go through seasons of expansion and recession. This is the reality of every economy. And the key is if you're in business for yourself, like I am, how to recession proof your business. We've got a very special guest today that we're going to be talking about this on the Brian Hurst Show. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of day it is that you're tuning in from wherever you're tuning in. We are so delighted that you have elected to join us on today's edition of the Brian Hurst Show. Now, being self-employed is both awful and awesome. It is awful from the standpoint of sometimes you're in a situation where you're not sure where your next paycheck is going to come from, and you're relying on the flow of business to keep things going. It's awesome because working for yourself means that you get to set your hours and that you force your workflow, at least for the most part, around your schedule, which is a wonderful thing. So, the challenge for me in any way in selling residential real estate is I can take a look back over, say, a 12 or 24 or even 36-month period of time and kind of average and see what the productivity, what the volume of business is going to look like, kind of predict. But at the same time, we are subject to the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows in the market. Well, today we have a very special guest who's going to share with us some tips about how to recession proof your business. Her name is Beate CHELETTE. She's a growth architect and the founder of the Women's Code, and she provides visionaries and leaders with proven strategies, blueprints, and growth maps that provide clear steps to improve business systems, strengthen leadership skills, and teams so that clients and audiences can maximize profits and scale their impact. So I would like everybody, without any further ado, to please welcome to today's edition of the Brian Hurst Show, Beate CHELETTE. Did I say your name correctly?
You nailed it.
All
Excellent
right.
job. Thank you. Thank you, Brian, for inviting me. And I'm excited to be here and talk about, what we can do as business owners to make sure that we are staying on top of whatever it is that's happening in the market right now.
For sure. And it's we all get that feeling in our stomach, the unsurety and the unknown. And what is important for us is to do what we can do. And that's what we're going to delve into that a little more. But before we do that, where are you tuning in from this evening?
I'm right here in Los Angeles,
Oh,
in the land of the misfits, and I say this very lovingly because everybody who doesn't fit anywhere else fits here just perfectly, including myself.
yeah, Los Angeles is a melting pot. A
Truly.
lot of transplanted people. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Dodgers fan. I grew up watching Dodgers baseball, so I'm pretty excited about, Shohei Ohtani. I don't know if you've heard about all that
Oh my
news.
God, $700 million. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but it's I don't know if you saw it's deferred.
Yeah,
So he's only gonna get paid $2 million a year for 10 years.
right, but what I want to know is like, what is the deal of the deferred? How did the deferred at 2 million a year ends up to 700 million?
Well, they'll end up having to pay him the other 680 million the following 10 years.
Yeah. But only if he wins.
I don't know if that's in the contract or not.
Supposedly somewhere in there it is, because it says it in the LA Times, because ultimately he wants to win. And I'm like,
Oh, right.
oh,
Yeah.
did they put that in there?
No, he's gonna get paid no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go down to Dodger games and, almost it doesn't really matter who the visiting team is. There'll be people there with the jerseys from the visiting teams from Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and
Yeah.
New York and all over the country. So Los Angeles is the land of the transplants, and I'm here in Southern California as well. Although I'm in the high desert, so I'm about 85 miles from you. So tell me, I saw in your biography that you are a first generation immigrant.
I am. I'm originally from Germany, and I came here by myself in my early 20s to find adventure. And I can truthfully say I have not had a boring day since.
You moved here by yourself.
By myself.
Did you have any kind of
Nope.
a plan,
Nope.
or
Nope.
you just parachuted in to Los Angeles and made the best of it?
No, I went first to Key West, so that was the only thing that I had figured out. Is I had a friend, one of my dear colleagues at Elle magazine, which I was working on as photo editor at the time. She had a sister who lived in Key West, and she had a friend who had just recently gone through a divorce, a 5-year-old, and she said he needed an au pair. And so after I had a smashing career at Elle magazine, Germany, I moved to Key West to live on a houseboat without water or electricity to take care of a 5-year-old.
Did you already know the language?
Yes, I did. I did. I did speak English, but didn't speak English that well. I spoke English well enough.
So, how did things evolve? Your bio says that you ended up over $100,000 in debt. How did you arrive in Key West and then find yourself in that situation?
In a really crazy story. So after I was in Key West for a couple months, I always knew that I was going to end up in Los Angeles, and so I moved to Los Angeles. I found a job as an artist representative, and I was working for this company, and then I got in a massive recession. I got laid off right there with a 6 months old, and understanding that probably this marriage that I was in wasn't going to last. And so I find myself going through then a divorce, having to figure out how to run my own business with a 6 months old. And then the big earthquake came in Los Angeles. That's sort of how the whole thing started to set up. And now coming out of the recession, staying in this post earthquake disaster, the 13 years, the decade of bad luck started that included fires, floods, riots, earthquakes, September 11th, the tsunami. Uh, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. And so the story is, I set up to build a business on my own and I would get ahead. And then somebody took a frying pan, the cast iron one, and whacked me over the head really hard. And then I fell back and then I moved ahead. And then somebody came with another frying pan and whacked me over the head. And then I fell back. And on whether that was a photographer that betrayed me and told me that I could sue him for $100,000 to have him pay me the 50 that he owed me, to the employee that had the idea to run her business, which was my business without me, with my key vendor, to clients that then paid them, not me, because they called all my clients and told them that I wasn't paying them, which was an absolute lie. And then the lawsuit that ensued as a result of it, because they had betrayed me and they had stolen from me, and ultimately that settled in my favor. To then September 11th, that wiped out my production business literally in one day. I lost a $500,000 in one day. And and then as I'm thinking I'm finally coming out of all of this, a tsunami killed one of my key vendors, my most prolific vendor, and then my dad died. So it was really an era of where we talk about resilience, adversity, and just a fight for survival. And I think what people relate to in the story is that there was a little bit for everything, right? I mean, we have the divorce and we have all the natural disasters and we have the betrayal and the lawsuits. So there's a lot one can relate to, but then the story turns, Brian. And from the worst moment of my life, when my father died of pancreatic cancer, and I had gone to Germany to draw my business, and then he had the stroke, but the stroke was really cancer that had metastasized in the brain. And then 6 weeks later, he dies. And while I'm at the funeral, I get a phone call from my office that we've been served a notice and I'm losing my house that
Hmm.
I didn't own, but I had an agreement with the previous landlord that I was able to run a home office. But when the building was sold, the new landlord, didn't want to honor that. And I fell on my knees and I raised my fist and I yelled at God, Brian, and I said,
Mm,
if you have a plan, this would be a really excellent time to fill me in because at this
mhm,
point in my life, I don't have any idea what the heck is going on.
mm.
And that's when the story started to turn, and very quickly and very interestingly.
So the business that you had started your business in Key West?
No, 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 no. I was on a pair in Key West. I did not start anything. I had to get off that crazy, crazy train of being at a fashion magazine.
Gotcha. So you started your business when you came to Los Angeles.
Yes, after I was laid off in the recession. Yes.
Gotcha. And your business is photography?
My business was at that time around photography. So I'm a trained photography. I was a photographer representative and photography producer. So I did a lot of still photography shoots. So all the catalogs in Europe, Levi's, Wrangler, um, Mercedes Benz, BMW, they would come here to Los Angeles and I'd produce their photo shoots.
Wow. So it was during this time where you're building your business that you experienced a series of unfortunate events, including earth, the natural disaster, failed relationships, the terrorist attack, and the ebbs and flows, the up and down of the economy. And somehow you were able to overcome and persevere through all of that.
Yes. And then I built a new business. And that's when I got again into debt. So the lawsuit settled and it came out with nothing because then I had to pay the lawyer, I had to pay my debt, and then I literally like spent the last $100 on the flowers as a thank you to the attorney. And I was like, okay, so now I'm starting all over again. And I built this stock photography syndication business, but I was out of money. And so that's at the point where I had to borrow money to pay interest on borrowed money, also called as the death spiral in finance. And as I said, then my father dies and I'm sitting there and I don't know what am I going to do with all of this. And then I come back and I have to move. I don't know of what. And I get a letter from the White House. The White House. The White House. And in my desperation, I had written a letter to the President of the United States. And I only wrote that letter because my former mother-in-law was a complete nag about it. She told me, if you need help, you should go to the number one guy in the country. You need to write to the President of the United States. And she just would not stop. And then,
This was George W. Bush.
yes. And then finally, Brian, I said, I'm going to write the damn letter. So just said, I've written the letter and we don't ever have to have this conversation again. So imagine my surprise when I get a letter from the White House.
Okay. I've talked to a lot of people. I can't think of anybody that's ever received a letter from the White House, so we're
All
all
right.
very
Well, it gets better. So with this letter, I was put in touch with the second in command of the Small Business Administration in all of Los Angeles County because they also got a letter from the White House. And the deputy chief director of the SBA thought, who is this nutcase that writes a letter to the president? Why doesn't she just pick up the phone and call? Which, Brian, never even occurred to me. So as I walk in and I meet with him, he says, I'll put in what you put in. And so within a couple months, they had found me a bank that was going to restructure my now $135,000 in debt, that freed up my line of credit, that brought me to break even 3 months later. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category, which was celebrity homes, celebrity at home stories. Because the A-listers that I represented worked with other A-listers. And next thing I know, I get Francis Ford Coppola, Madonna, Simon Baker, Julianne Moore, Seal. I get all these at home stories. Now I was an editor at Elle magazine. I used to buy these stories. So, of course, I knew how to sell them. And so I built up this syndication network into 79 countries all over the world that were licensing these images. And I became the world leader in that category. And then a Bill Gates company comes and says, "Can you tell us how you do it?" And I said, "Absolutely not. You want it? You buy it." And they said, "Okay, how much?" I said, "Millions." And they said, "Fine."
Well, that is quite the story. Extremely dramatic.
Yeah.
What huge lows and highs.
hmm
And so where are you now? So this was you sold to Bill Gates how long ago?
In 2006.
So it was, going on 20 years ago, 17 years ago.
Yes, just about.
How has your life since then planed out?
Well, I retired for, I think, what is going down in the book as a week. I had this moment where I had this idea that I was going to go to whatever, Neiman Marcus, and that I was going to buy expensive coats and t-shirts. And then I stand there and I'm picking up a t-shirt and it's a $200 t-shirt. And my daughter is pulling out a Burberry coat and it's like $2,500. I turned around and walked out and I said, there's a reason why I didn't buy a $200 t-shirt then. And I don't think I'm going to start buying a $200 t-shirt now because it just was meaningless to me.
Mhm.
And with that, I decided that I had to be in service of people that want to make an impact and figure out how I was going to share all these shortcuts of this just insane, crazy story. Because fine, I mean, if somebody would tell you, Brian, I had, I was in debt and then I had to figure out how to get out of debt. Okay, fine. Somebody who says, well, I lost a lot in the earthquake, you'd go, fine. Somebody says, I lost $500,000 because my business, died in September 11th, you would say fine. But it was all of that.
Wow.
And then there was more.
Are you gonna leave us hanging on that?
Sorry about that.
It's okay, you're gonna leave us hanging? There was more?
Yes, there was more. Um, I overcame all of these things. And I think that's really the part of the story where you then go, what do I do with that? Who can derive a benefit of that? And then I went and I said, I'm going to take this and I'm going to build systems around what I've learned. And I'm going to give people shortcuts so that they can overcome adversity. They can be more resilient. They can figure out how to figure out a way through dark times and make it as simple as possible by breaking it down into steps. And that's what I do today. As a growth architect, I architect growth for
Wow.
businesses.
Okay, so let's dive in a little bit onto that. The topic of today's show is how to recession-proof your business. Give us some insights, some tips on what that looks like, and for me, what I do for my living is I sell real estate. Boy, you wanna talk about, sometimes there can be real fluctuations there.
Yes. So I think the most important thing for you to understand, not you personally, but for you, like plural, your listeners, is that you don't want to follow what other people do because people have a herd mentality. You want to buy when the market is low and you want to sell when the market is high. But most people get into this frenzy, the fear of missing out, and they do exactly what everybody else does. And then they wonder why they accelerate certain things is because we literally talked ourselves into a recession because everybody's talking about the recession. And they
Right,
believed that there was a recession before there even was a recession.
right.
If I were to ask this simple question to your listeners and I said, if everybody else stops advertising, what do you think you should do? If everybody else stops, you
If
should.
everybody else stops advertising,
Or
what do you think
promoting,
you should do?
marketing.
That
Mhm.
would be a opportunity to take up more market share, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindset that you have to go out into. The example that I give, Brian, is that when we look at nature, There is no wait and see universal law or scientific law or physical law. There's no tree that says, you know, let's just see how it goes. I'm going to sprout about 100 leaves. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if people like the leaves. And then if it goes well and the birds come and the people enjoy it, then I'm going to roll out the rest of my leaves over the next couple of months. That's ludicrous. There is no squirrel that says, I'm not sure if there's going to be a winter. I'm just going to hang out, bathe in the sun, not hide or find any nuts or food, not dig it into the ground, because who even said that there was a winter? What if we don't have a winter and I'm doing all of this for nothing? Said no squirrel ever.
Right.
So why do we as people, if universal laws exist in nature and in life and in the world that rules everything, why do we think that those laws don't apply to us? We know, because we've been in business long enough, that it is not going to be like this forever. I can
Right.
give this to you as a fact. I can tell you, when I bought my house in 2006, I paid 6.75% interest. And then I refinanced it to 4%. And then I refinanced it to 3.5% fixed. But I bought the house and then the market imploded. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. And my house is now worth $1 million more than what I bought it for. So even though I went technically under, but look at what happened now, because the pendulum always swings the other way. So people need to remember, and this is sort of the interesting thing I think about human behavior, is that we act like this hasn't happened before. We have case studies on this. We know exactly what's going to happen before. And when the market goes up like crazy, I can guarantee you what the next thing is the market's going to do. It's going to go down. And if the market has been down, I can guarantee you that the market's going to go up again. And if tech is down, I can guarantee you that tech's going to be up again, because technology isn't going to be a driver of any economy anymore. Since when? What, people are going to stop buying from Amazon? People are not watching Netflix. They may cancel their subscription for 6 months or so to save money. But the minute they got the money, they're going to go back on.
Right.
So to recession-proof your business is, you have to remind yourself that the way it is right now is not always going to be like that. And you have to take control over the things that you have control over, which is you're going to have to double down on everything. There's this, really great example. Somebody told me, and I'm sure you've heard this before. So there's two salesmen that go on an island, and they're shoe salesmen. And when they go on this island, they see that nobody's wearing shoes. One salesman calls the boss and says, "That's it. Nobody's wearing shoes here. There's no market here. You need to fly me back home." And the other salesman says, "Oh my God, what a golden opportunity. Guess what? Nobody is wearing shoes. Send
Right.
me 10 times as many."
Right.
So that's how you have to look at this. Which side of this are you going to stand on? Are you going to be the guy that says, well, we know people are still buying. The last time I went to the Apple store, people were still buying. There is an open house next to my house. People are still going there. It's just that you have to put a little bit more effort in it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not get the top dollar that you used to get, but there's still an opportunity. And even if the interest rates are high, they're not always going to stay that high, because it's really bad for business if interest rates are high.
Yeah.
And the Fed knows that.
You had mentioned that there's 3 essential framework elements to grow in your expertise. Why don't you touch on those?
Yeah. So the three framework elements are: number one, you always have to have a strategy. And I think this is what a lot of people really need to think about right now in this market. What's your strategy? Are you going to be a high cost provider, low cost provider, quality service? What's your strategy? What are you even doing? Where are you going at? Because if we know where you're going and we know where you are, we can map out the strategy to get from here to there. But that's where most people already have an issue because they don't even know where that goal is. Number two, you always have to be growth minded. This this commisery of it's so bad. Look at what's happening here. Look at what's happening in Ukraine, in Russia, in Israel, Hamas. Look at what's happening all over the world. Looks what's happening to women's rights. Looks what's happening in the real estate market. I can go there and I can find 1,000 reasons on why I probably shouldn't be in business. But then when I look at opportunity, then I see where opportunity really is. And a lot of the big companies were founded in recessions.
Mm.
And another example that I like to cite, there is a SaaS solution called Slack. And Slack is a messenger service that a lot of people in groups and in businesses are using to communicate very quickly. It's like a DM type of service, direct messaging service. Slack used to be a video game.
Really?
It's just that their messengering within the video game was so good and the video game sucked that they threw the video game out and they kept the messenger system.
Wow.
You have to be able to look at what is the opportunity in this market. I'm going to give you another example. We were concentrating a lot on the high ticket stuff last year where we, did the $7,500, $10,000 programs. But we found that the market is changing and that a lot of what's happening in the market is an influx of people going into entrepreneurship, which I'm sure you're going to see a lot in real estate. Maybe not right at this very moment because the market's a little bit tight, but that's my prediction because people are being laid off, people are
Mm.
losing their jobs, and people are sick and tired of other people telling them what to do. And you mentioned that at the beginning of the show, that that's what entrepreneurship is about.
Right.
So now if you think about it from that perspective, that there's a huge influx into the market, where's the opportunity now? So we looked at this and we said the opportunity isn't to sell high ticket items. The opportunity is help people that are wanting to go out on their own to find the shortcuts on how to grow, build, and scale their businesses. So we took a program that we had created 7 years ago. One of our best-selling programs sold over 22,000 times through a partner, and we updated it to today's market conditions, and we made it a lower cost product. And then, and I see that you're sharing our growth blocker quiz. On that quiz, which I think is a phenomenal quiz because it tells you what your number one growth blocker is, we found that the leads that we were getting from that quiz are not the kinds of leads that we wanted. So we created a new quiz, and we created a quiz that's called What's Your Talent Worth? And you
Mm.
find it at what'syourtalentworth.com. And we did this with the intention of saying, where's the opportunity in this market? And we sat down and we said, well, if the opportunity in this market is that more people are wanting to figure out if they want to start their own businesses or go into business on their own or growing whatever they have or recession proofing their business, what's the first thing that they want to know? The first thing they want to know is, how much money can I make
Well,
with
of
this?
course.
So I came up with a formula, a profit formula that I created. It's a mathematical formula, it's a calculation. So you put in 5 factors and then it'll calculate you your number.
Really?
Uh-huh.
This is what's your talent worth?
Whatsyourtalentworth.com. And when you are on that website and then you fill this out, I guarantee you that the number that comes up is going to be higher than the number that you are at right now. And then what does that mean? That means that you have an opportunity that you haven't tapped into fully. And then
Wow.
you have a choice. Of course, the idea is here because it's a lead generation piece is to buy the program. But it then would be to say, well, if I'm making $150,000 or $250,000, but this quiz with my numbers, those are not my now. I'm not promising you 10x. It's your numbers, your expertise, what you're telling me, calculated. Let's say that number is a 1.5 million and you're making, let's say, 500. There's a discrepancy of $1 million. So now you and I can suddenly have a completely different conversation. It's like, why is there such a discrepancy between the number? So now in this opportunity of connecting with a client on a lead generation, I'm having a very different conversation than a cold call.
Right.
And that's, I think, where everybody and your listeners specifically really need to think about this. Where is the opportunity in this market? And if I was in real estate right now, I would be thinking about who are the people that are still needing to move.
Mm.
It's people whose kids needing to go to school and they need to be in a good school system. So I would focus my efforts on areas that had really good school system. And I'm just totally riffing this right now, right? And I then run a campaign with people that are maybe adjacent to this area where the school system is not good. So for example, Westchester compared to Santa Monica, which is not that far away. Santa Monica has a very good school system. Westchester, not so much. But and then I would figure out what are the people, what do people really need? Because if the increased price of a home could be justified with private school, because then suddenly you have to pay private school and that adds up.
Mm.
So you need to figure out in your particular market, where are the opportunities right now? What are people looking for? So we have a house next door that just went on the market. And it's a small house. What a piece of garbage. Um, and so when I went in there, the realtor said, just forget all of this, what you're seeing here. Let's just talk about the school system. She says, this is the cheapest house you can find in this entire area for this school system. And she's absolutely correct. Never
Yeah.
mind, it's a piece of shit house.
Yeah.
Sorry, but true. So that's how you have to think about this. You don't have to change everything. You just have to adjust your approach. Or in the high end market, people with money have money
Yeah.
and they need to park it somewhere. Somebody
Yeah.
is making money in this market.
Yeah. Well, if you were to, we'll ask this last question of you, and you've been so insightful, and you have such a compelling story. We do encourage our audience to go to the quizzes there that are displayed. But I want you to answer this last question before we let you go. If somebody were to come to you and say, Beate, I'm in a situation where, I'm thinking of being an entrepreneur. I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to start my own business. What is the first thing they should do, and maybe a couple of follow-up steps?
So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to go to What's Your Talent Worth, take the quiz and look at that number. And then you look at that number and then you tell me on whether or not you want to wait. Because we just covered waiting. It's not a concept that exists in nature. So if you have an idea, then let's make today day one. Make today day one, not tomorrow, not next week, not sometime. There is no sometime. Today is the day. That's that. The second thing you do, and this is the third element of the three elements, is mindset. And mindset starts with making a decision.
Mm,
You're going to have to make a decision. And the
mm,
decision is not, yeah, sounds good. I could do that. I could dive into that. When you make a decision, it is like, I am doing this. That's a
mm,
decision.
mm,
Because I ask myself always three questions. Has it been done before? Is there somebody out there that's doing what I'm doing successfully? So, are there realtors out there right now that are making a lot of money? Absolutely. So, if that is true, then the second question is, if they can do it, can I do it too? Then the answer to that question is yes. Because if it exists and somebody does it, then you should be able to do it too. And then the third question now shifts to not can I, but to how can I?
mm.
And if it's the how can I, then the next step is, can I do this by myself? Who is doing it? Do I want to put in time or money? You can, of course, learn everything on your own. No question. The question is, do you have that much time? And if you spend a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years figuring it out, that there's a cost associated with that. That may be more expensive than giving somebody $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 or $25,000 to help you save yourself 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years. So these are really decisions that you have to make and say, if I'm serious about this, it's not that anybody's out there trying to get you, selling you stuff you don't want. It's you making a decision and actively searching for somebody to help you to get there faster. And
Wow.
then you make that decision and you do that.
So if somebody is thinking along those lines, they need to go where again?
They should come, go to uncoversession.com or fill out the quiz. What's your talent worth.com. If you heard something and you say, I must speak to somebody on the team, go to uncoversession.com. Make sure you mention this show and Brian's name so that we can give you priority treatment. While we're at it, will you please go wherever you pick up this show, give it a 5-star review and leave a comment. And it is important to leave a comment because it signals to the algorithm that Brian knows what he's talking about and it gets this show in front of more people. And that will make us all very, very happy. And then share the show with one other person.
Beate, you have been fabulous. You have an incredible story. Can't thank you enough for coming on today and sharing it with us. We do hope to have you on again some other time. We'll talk more about growing your business and what that looks like. But in the meantime, I hope that you have a fabulous rest of your day, and we will see you hopefully again soon.
Thank you again for having me, Brian.
Have a wonderful day. Wow, wasn't she fascinating? First generation immigrant from Germany who went through as tough a time as anybody could ever ask for, and yet was able to overcome. And hope that you learned some things along the way. Let's get to this week's market update. This is the High Desert Housing Market Update for December 12th, 2023. We're getting down here to the end of the year. Last 30 days sold in our market, 283. So that's well below the average. We expect that this time of year. Interesting that median sale price is remaining stubbornly high at $425,000 year over year. Last year, we sold 309 homes. So we sold 8.4% fewer homes, same period last year. And our price is up 6.3%. Here probably next week, I'll do a year end and we'll compile all of the data from 23 and compare it to all of the data from 22. And I imagine we're going to be right there around 5 or 6% appreciation is what we experienced this year in a market where the interest rates were very high and the inventory was very low. So that is interesting. In escrow, 394 homes. The median sale price for those homes is $433,000.15. And then we've got 820 active listings. So those active listings came up just a little bit. probably because of the slowdown in the absorption rate. And the median sale price on those active listings is $463.95. Last time I checked, going rate for garden variety FHA deal, 6.25 to 6.5%. We ask you to like, share, and subscribe, or just like our guest said, it really helps if you add a comment, share it with somebody. This helps us get the word out to help more people win in real estate and in life. We're going to try to come back next week and do that year-end show and give you all the numbers for the end of the year. In the meantime, we are serving your dreams. We look forward to seeing you again next week on The Brian Hirsch Show.